There was a stage production of a play by Peter Quilter called End of the Rainbow, produced in 2005, I believe. What are your recollections of seeing it, and what struck you about it and made you think this is a film?
Well, I just thought, I didn't know anything about this story. I just thought, what a remarkable story. And thought, well, I'll option it. And then the next day it was on the front cover of Arts and Leisure, New York Times, I think. Is it LA Times? LA Times. And I thought, well, that's that then. Somebody else has got it. Scott Rudin's got it. But I knew the producer of the play, and I thought, well, I'll hang on in there. And we got it. And it was just, there was something remarkable about it, that you could have this huge star having been in London for this period of time and having died in London. And I thought, well, we should do something with this. So Rosalind Wilder, I tracked down the real Rosalind Wilder, who you see in the film. And she opened the gates for us. She introduced us to people that have never spoken about Judy Garland ever. So a dresser who lived in South Africa who, very tentatively spoke to me and said, I haven't spoken about Judy for 40 years. We spoke to people that were members of the band. We spoke to dancers. And so we gradually this story emerged. It was much more detailed than a kind of the three-hander version of the play that I hope has made it more, real and genuine and given it a fabric that it didn't have before. But we were, it was thrilling.
Rupert, this film I really feel like allowed you to combine, your different talents of theater and film and bring a lot of your theater type experience to bear for the film. Was that part of the appeal for you?
Yeah, I guess maybe at some level. I think I felt that I'd spent 20 years in rehearsal rooms, very close to extraordinary performers and singers, and there's something about being in a rehearsal room where you're as close as we are now, which is you never get on the stage because there's a natural distance. And I felt like kind of witnessing the extraordinary pressures that performers go through, the sort of transcendent glory that they can find kind of in the discovery of their talent, particularly around music and singing and opera and musical theatre, that kind of thing. I felt like it would be wonderful if we could try and, obviously Garland had that in spades, if we could try and capture what it meant to perform and sing and the costs of that, and also the calling of that in a way as well, aside from all the extraordinary details of her life.
Renée, you've obviously sung in a film before, Chicago, and got an Oscar nomination for it. But when approached with this, yes? When approached with this idea, when you first heard about the idea of playing Judy, if one side of the spectrum is, I'm in, and the other side of the spectrum is, nope, too scary, where did you fall at the beginning?
It depends on the day, I suppose. Those are the thoughts going between the two kept me up at night for quite some time. And then there was this shift in perspective. There was no conversation about the official beginning of the process. There was just an invitation to come and have a little chat. And so the fellows invited me to London to just talk about it. We'll just talk about why, the motivation for making the film, why tell this story at this, about this chapter in her life. Try some makeup looks. Let's try this wig. And then they said, and we'll try some songs. And we'll book some time at Abbey Road, and you'll just come and you'll practice some songs at Abbey Road. And I said, let me just put that in my calendar. I'll be right there.
One thing I didn't know until yesterday morning was that you did part of your process in learning the voice and getting comfortable with the voice in your car, oftentimes on the 405 freeway. So if one of us were to have been driving past you on the 405 at the exact moment that you were figuring this character out, what would we have seen?
You would have probably called EMS thinking that the lady next to you was having a seizure. I'm sure of it. There was a lot of contortion. There was a lot of contorting the torso to get the sound out initially. That. Or else you might have just thought, wow, she's really having fun in there, isn't she?
David, when you think back to putting this whole production together, what was the biggest challenge as far as finding the perfect location for something?
Well, the one that was most important was the Talk of the Town. So it was the Hackney Empire that we chose in the end, and we went to see near derelict theatres in Streatham with roofs falling in, and Rupert was going, yeah, we can rebuild it. But what was important was to find, and this is sort of slightly a crossover to you as well, but we needed to find somewhere with a thrust stage, you know, which was what the Talk of the Town had, and it had this black, inky stage, and we needed that to be part of it. And again, coming back to Rosalind Wilder, Rosalind was the one that kind of gave us all these pictures from way back when, like had all these snapshots. So she was quite useful in that regard. So we knew what the fine feathers, who the dancers, knew exactly what they looked like and how they dressed, and we knew exactly what the stage would look like. I don't know if you want to say anything on.
Yeah, that particular thrust stage, architecturally, certainly in London, is quite hard to find because it's about the relationship between the circle and the stage, and most proscenium Victorian theatres have a closer circle, so you couldn't build out a thrust stage. The Hackney Empire, which was restored by a big lottery grant about 15 years ago, is a lyric house. It's for operetta and I guess opera performances in the late 19th century, and it allowed us to build out further. But even then, there was a lot of logistical problems about finding a theatre that was going to be free for the amount of time we had. And we had this very narrow window of 6 days I think we had 3 days to fit up and then 6 days to shoot and get out. And it was pretty crazy.
I know it's important to you that people understand that this was, yes, it's your performance, but there were a lot of people at play to help you create
Every day.
what we saw. Who were the people who you remember as being the most integral?
Well, these guys were there for the whole thing. And it felt like a fluid sort of series of experiments. We just started trying things with that visit in London, and then we just continued on from there. We worked with Jeremy Woodhouse and Rob Crafter, who was his assistant, who did fantastic makeup. I mean, just fantastic every day. You know, the glam was period, and the prosthetics were, I think, pretty hard to find, hard to see, and it was just a big process. And they did a great job trying everything. We just tried. We first put it all on and then took it all off. And I would have kept it all on if I could have, more to hide behind. But and then we, the composer Matt Dinkley was there working on the music every day, and then Andrew, the piano player, warmed me up, and he was like cheering, "Yes, you can." And let's see, who else was? I mean, there's Janine Tamim, who made these beautiful costumes, which are just out of this world. I mean, inspired by Judy's dress in the days, and she used antique sequins from France, from the period, to make these dresses as authentically as she could, and then she fit them to my assumed posture so that they wouldn't zip up if I wasn't standing like I was supposed to. Yeah, so I mean, all of these, it's true to be disciplined by antique sequins.
And just to throw in, since we've done the list, Cave Quinn, who did the production design, who did that amazing job. And we're working, it's not a $50 million budget, so she's trying to accommodate everything that Rupert's constantly demanding every day, and doing an amazing job. I mean, it looks fantastic.
So Renée, when you think about everything that went into perfecting Judy's performance, there's the singing, there's the dancing and the movement, and there's the unique facial expressions, which you capture so beautifully. When you think about all those three things, was there one aspect of it that was particularly challenging to feel like you had it mastered?
Those are big words. I don't know about perfecting and mastering anything.
Feeling good about it.
I feel like, gosh, it's so interesting. When I think back on this, I don't think about it in the traditional sense of making a film, because it didn't feel like the same kind of process. Again, it felt like we were trying things together, and we were all digging around to see if, like Rupert called it, mining for treasure. We were mining for these little bits that seemed essential to collect in order to conjure her essence in some way. And it felt like she was everywhere. Her photographs and the sound of her voice in interviews, and her music, and the stories going around, and the things that somebody had discovered the night before that they bring that day. So it felt like, I don't know, it was it was almost palpable in every room that we were working in. This essence of this extraordinary person and the legacy of her work was very much alive. It sort of just started to soak in for everybody. And in terms of difficulty, it was such a joy that I can't look at it like that. It just felt like spoiled, rotten, what a wonderful professional obligation to have, to go down the Judy rabbit hole and just, feast on that every day. But some things took more time, but we had time. So in the beginning, the year before, we had that time. So
It's great to be here with all of you. Thanks to all of you for sticking around.